introduce you guys to Skylar Rallison. Skylar is our CONNECTpreneur community manager, and she will make opening remarks. Again, thank you guys for joining us, and I'll hand it over to Sky.
Awesome. Great. As Chan said, so we have a special masterclass today. It's using ChatGPT to grow your business. So today we have Doug Goldstein. He is the managing director of Saltpot Capital. We have Fred Goldstein. He's the president of Accountable Health. We have John, I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name, but Bordowski, I believe, executive director of Salt Flats, and Joshua Kanoe, senior director of analytical products at Black Sky. So just a little bit about the masterclass before I turn it over to the team. As many of you have seen, generative AI from ChatGPT, AutoGPT to Chaos GPT is a game changer. It's a new productivity tool. Just like the World Wide Web changed the way that we worked as we transitioned into the new digital age. And now all that data we are generating through our digitally powered lives is the rocket fuel for the AI age. So I'll turn it over now to Doug to start the class today and to teach us all about this topic. So thanks, Doug.
Hey, it's great to be here. And we assembled faculty because generative AI, ChatGPT is just one type of generative AI. There are multiple players in the market, and we're going to go through what those different players are. We're going to compare and contrast. We're going to talk about a series of use cases. So we've assembled a team, and I want to include that team with you because we are going to have some polls, and we're going to get your input because I think this may be a masterclass. It may be the first, but it won't be the last one on this whole area of AI. So can we go forward a slide? Yeah, it is a huge game changer, and I want to reinforce that. I mean, it just struck me. I remember when I used to walk into a library and pull out a drawer to go find something. And I've been looking at the history and how fast technology is advancing from the printing press to the Dewey Decimal System. And what many people don't realize is the first AI class or session conference was really in 1956. And the issue with AI then is it didn't have the data to learn from. So if we look at these trends from the use of radio to television onward to the first search engine, we're not in the digital age anymore. We're way beyond that. It is the AI age. And when you see that this introduction of generative AI, most well-known as ChatGPT, late last year, yes, it was in beta before that, but it was released into the wild, and the rapid adoption. So I assembled some folks that I've been working with, Ryan Murphy from Salt Flats, who's a leader in insights and analytics, Fred, who I've been teamed with to make a difference in people's lives through healthcare, and Josh and I share the Mindshare community in the Washington, D.C. area. And when there was a thread going through Mindshare, and people were talking about, oh, is this dangerous? And we have, movement on the Hill around policy. And, it just struck me, it's a hammer, right? So I can use a hammer to build a house, or I can use it for breaking and entering. And so thus enter we have a new tool in our toolbox. And so we're going to walk through some use cases on that. So the first thing is, it's like, I asked, it's now a virtual assistant to me. So it is my first draft creator. So when we started talking about running this masterclass and evolving it from where we were looking at one focused on data and digital asset management, and we morphed it into generative AI because it is now a tool that will save us time. And I know it's reinventing, not will, it is reinventing how knowledge workers do their work. So it's really beyond search, right? So there are many forms of ChatGPT or generative AI. And one funded initially by Elon Musk and then Microsoft is OpenAI. And they have three forms of that. So ChatGPT, which is primarily working with text and other materials. DALL-E is very focused on visual analysis. And I'm not an expert in the APIs, but in essence, API models are being available for people to load their own content in. So Dean Koontz, the horror writer, loaded his work in and then asked it to produce a book. And he was amazed at how accurate and similar it was to his writing style, but he also noted that it lacked some element of humanity. Now, we have Google. Yeah, we have Google, that is a major search engine, but we've had Edge and Bing and Microsoft alternatives. So I use multiple search engines. I've used it typically to just see how they different work and the results being pulled back. And you have variances between how they were displaying search results. But Bing and Edge have integrated ChatGPT-like capabilities into their search window. So what we're going to walk through today is use cases that the faculty, our team, has been testing as we move through this process.
Could we load the first survey?
Yeah, first survey. Good idea, Fred. So, have you ever used a language model or chatbot like ChatGPT or something similar before? So let's see how I think we have over 200 people here. So let's do a quick poll and we'll see the results of what people are you playing with it? Are you testing it?
I'm giving it just 1 minute. We still have some results coming in, and then I'll put it up right after we're done with it.
And we're going to try to get through the content in about 30 minutes, and then we want to open it up to questions both through text and through voice. All right, so what are we seeing? We're seeing we got 25% of this group that could be faculty because they've been using it extensively. So we're looking forward to your insights. Yes, some people have tested it, and we've got about 27% of the people who are just here to learn and figure out how important and this is going to be to their work and their companies. No, it's like I spent 20 minutes, 14 minutes, whatever it was, generating the polling questions. And Fred said, "What are you doing?" And so in seconds, he turned back these questions. So this is our inspiration and the first use case that we're sharing relative to it just saved me time. And I am an iterative writer. Over my career, I've written 11 books, and it's always hard to start from a blank sheet of paper. ChatGPT, Google Bard, the alternatives are my first draft writer right now. So Fred, you've been testing this a little bit more extensively than I have, and we're actually sitting in the same room at a healthcare innovation conference. And so Fred, I'm going to turn it over to you and talk about how generative AI is helping you do your work more effectively.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I'm going to try to go through these slides fairly quickly. But the first thing I thought about was Batman and Robin. And I said to myself, Robin always says, "Holy Batman," or "Holy this." And I said, what would be the phrase that Robin would say for the ability of generative AI to create this type of content? And essentially what happened was I got a ton of responses, and these were the first couple from ChatGPT. And what's fascinating to note is, here's the question I put in. First one was, "Holy Batman, this generative AI is a content creation superhero." But what really shocked me even more was it then took Batman's response. And if you look at the second line, it's like having a trusty sidekick that can generate high-quality content at lightning speed. That would be something he might have said to Robin.
Well, that's what I realized when it helped me write the polling question.
Or look at this last one. It's like having an army of bat writers working tirelessly in the bat cave.
Oh, that strikes me, Fred, that we've got a little writer's strike going on in Hollywood. Why is that?
Yeah, we sure do. And so you think about this, it understands context and is able to pull stuff through. So we'll go to the next slide. And we'll get to this question. But the question then is, if this is a generative AI content creation superhero, does it really work? And I'm always of the question is, are there outcomes? Does something make a difference? And this is actually a study that was released in March of this year. It's preprint, so it was put up on the website. It has been reviewed, but it's from MIT. And what they did is they took 444 college-educated professionals. They were grant writers, marketers, consultants, data analysts, HR executives, and managers. And they said to them, okay, we're going to give you a project that should take 25 to 30 minutes, and we want you to complete it. And that project could be a press release, a short report, a data analysis plan, or delicate emails. And then they did the first one. And if you look at this top left graph, this is the results of the two groups. The group that was going to be split to use ChatGPT, and the group that was just going to be given a software package that helped them write something, but didn't provide any explanations or information or stuff like that. And you'll notice that the group in the beginning took almost 30 minutes. Those that got ChatGPT in their second writing took 17 minutes to complete the task, while those who were given just a writing program took 27. It worked. It made their time way shorter. But what they did was even more impressive. They took them, all of these write-ups, and they had 3 people, reviewers, grade them. And you can see, beginning in the first one where they're each given the same task, they graded it very similar. But those that got ChatGPT went from a mean grade of about 4 up to 4.6 out of a scale of 6. And those that did not use ChatGPT actually showed a decline using the other system. So this system made their writing better. It also vastly improved how long it took them to complete it. So you can see this is the group who, in green over here, who had ChatGPT. 20% of them did it in less than 5 minutes. There was nobody in the control group that did it in less than 5 minutes. You can see 6 to 10% had 5%. So almost half the group was able to do it in under 10 minutes, and only 5% or so of the others were able to. And finally, a really important point, it took those in this graph, it took those who had the lowest grades. If they used ChatGPT, they had the biggest bump. So the lower productivity or effective employees using this software actually got better. Those who were already good remained good, but it brought up the quality of work for the others. So is it in essence a creation superhero? It sure looks like it from this. So what does that mean? Well, you've probably seen the strike going on by the Writers Guild in Hollywood. While they're talking about we want to have so many employees per show, we want to have higher salaries, the underlying issue they want is do not use generative AI because you'll put us out of work. So it's fascinating to realize that they see the impact of this and what it can do. So let's talk about this a little bit. There are threats and opportunities associated with generative AI. It's going to come. That finger's pointing at us. The question is, do you become a butterfly or do you not use it? Think about when the watches first came out. The people who invented the electronic watch were actually the Swiss. They were the largest producer of watches in the world with 90% market share. One of them Hamilton Watch Company came up with the electronic watch, said this isn't the future of watches, and put it out at a trade show with no patent. Within a few years, the Swiss market had dropped to 50% worldwide from 90 plus because they didn't recognize what they had. This is both a threat because others will use it against you and an opportunity because you can take it and advance your work.
One point is that when Senator Blumenthal and clearly on the Hill and throughout governments across the planet are this question, but Senator Blumenthal actually used generative AI to not just write his speech, he used it to create his voice and deliver his opening remarks to the review of this technology in the Senate just recently.
So there's a question I really want to address it right now about the generative AI issue and generating fake references. Yes, ChatGPT does that. It's not connected to the internet. The references you see here are my references to the original article by MIT. You'll see another reference further down. It's my reference. And I'm going to show you an example of where this sometimes doesn't work. So this is not a be-all and end-all. You have to understand what you're working with. Let me go to the next slide now. What did I do? I took it and said, will you review my website and make recommendations to make it better? Now, I use Bard for this because Bard is connected to the internet here. And it then looked at my website and said, it's good, but by the way, you should do this. Add some more case studies. Make the blog more interactive. and improved the search functionality, which was interesting because it said, for example, if a user searches for population health, all the pages come up, even though some of the services are not directly related to population health. So it went through this. It figured it out. It determined I had a contact form. It said the homepage is clear and has links to the blog, etc. So it actually went through it and found some stuff and made some recommendations that I'm going to use.
Performance improvement.
Yeah.
Optimizing this without hiring somebody or having an assistant evaluate that and give you their opinion.
Sure. So here's another work example. And this will go along with that question. Can anybody spot the error in this? I asked ChatGPT to translate to English, and I happened to live in the Netherlands in 10th grade and learned to speak Dutch. Hallo, ik spreek in Nederlands. Welste je, let me just grab the last, die taal, which means, hello, I speak Dutch. Do you speak this language? Notice what it did. Hello, I speak in English. It didn't translate it to English. It took which I wanted to do was to say, hello, I speak Dutch. Do you speak this language? It converted it to, hello, I speak English. It took the prompt incorrectly based on what I wanted. So I'd probably have to reprompt it. But a clear example is pointed out that sometimes there are errors in this. And it's particularly important when you're looking at technical stuff that you have enough expertise to identify those, or as for the example that talked about the use of this for, I'm sorry, for that first example that was about, the citations.
So the quick point here is that how you use it. I mean, you can hammer a nail poorly. So what are your what's your metadata approach? What keywords? So as you test the different approaches to generative AI, test it with different terms. What innovations will make a difference, or what technologies will make a difference? So the words you use are really important.
Yep. And the question about validity of ChatGPT, you have to know enough about the field to understand if it's hallucinating. And it does hallucinate sometimes. And so it can't just be used. But for general stuff, like I'll show you, here's another example. ChatGPT versus Bard. Translate, hello, I hope you have a wonderful day, to Arabic. Look what ChatGPT did. It gave me the phrase in Arabic. I don't read Arabic. Versus Bard, which said, sure, here's a translation. And it did say, use this code with caution. But this code here is identical to what ChatGPT came up with. And down here it said the Arabic word for hello is marhaba. The Arabic word for, and I may be mispronouncing these, for hope is amal. The Arabic word for wonderful is, etc. And then it said, so the complete translation of hello, I hope you have a wonderful day, is this. And so I don't speak Arabic. I would assume that is correct or close. And
it's more detailed.
It's more detailed. It gives me a sense, but you can see the details I got here versus the two, and you'll notice that when you use them. So here's an interesting use case for me. The article on the left, canonical Hubble tension resolving early dark energy cosmologies are inconsistent with the Lyman alpha forest. That article is written by my son, who's a physics PhD at Columbia studying cosmology, and I have no idea what it said. I could read it. I read the whole dang thing. And I did take physics in college, but not this level. So I said, can you please explain this article in layman's terms or layperson's terms? And this is what it said. Cosmology is the study of the universe. That makes sense. I understand that. The Hubble constant is a measure of the rate at which the universe expands. I know that's true. It's by Edwin Hubble. Early dark energy is the following. The Lyman alpha forest is the following. And then it said the study's findings are important because they rule out one possible explanation for the Hubble tension. So I now understand in my terms what that article was about, obviously not down to the level of detail, but this is an example of how you can use this to take complex things and oh, thank you on that note about the Arabic speaker. Thank you so much for telling us that was correct. And thanks for the pronunciation too. I was giving it my best shot. So let me go ahead and just quickly finish here. The things I would recommend everybody do, and I'm going to tell you an example of this. I've been consulting with a company, and they have a new marketing director, a new sales director. I said, put this up, use it to write your first drafts, use it to write your first email, and they've been doing that. And so I have it up all the time, both Bard and ChatGPT, and I just suddenly will see something and feed it into it. I want to know about that. I want to learn about this. It could be something with my house. It could be something about whether I aerate under my dock to help the oxygen content in the area I live. It's giving me answers to all of these things. The other thing is recognize its limitations. It sometimes makes mistakes. Understand if you're using it technically, understand your field well enough to be able to say, that's wrong. I need to rewrite that. Oh, that's good. Let me take this. But I would recommend everybody use it. Just use it. And as a friend of mine said, just leave it up all the time and you'll get value out of it. It's helped me write a number of my blog posts. It's helped me for teaching my master's course in advanced payment models for healthcare. It's helped me write questions for exams, all of those things. And as long as you understand its limitations, you'll find value in this. So with that, go ahead.
Ryan, we want to turn it over. So the interesting thing is, how do we use it to optimize business? And this cocktail approach is very interesting. So we'll turn it over to Ryan.
Awesome. Thanks, Doug. So as you just heard, obviously ChatGPT has a few shortcomings, particularly ones that were pointed out in the chat were that the data it's using is fairly outdated from a couple years ago, as well as it doesn't have access to any proprietary data that you maybe have hold of within your organization. So I want to talk a little bit about how you can train ChatGPT. We're going to talk about it through this application, very basic application here. That we built where basically from a few pieces of user input, whether it's an event that you're planning for, you have a base liquor, maybe a few mixers on hand, you can tell ChatGPT that you want it to produce a new cocktail recipe. So everything you're seeing on the right from the photo as well as the recipe was all generated from ChatGPT. And we're going to talk a little bit about how it goes about doing that. So if you want to go to the next slide here. So in the background, the first steps are really the user just putting in the appropriate cocktail ingredients. So instead of the user having to worry about writing out a whole prompt that will, generate the proper response, the application actually takes their inputs and puts it into a prompt that is then sent to ChatGPT. So prompts are really important in terms of how you work with these AI models, because depending on what you actually prompt OpenAI or Bard or any of these other GPT models with, the response will be very different. So once that prompt is sent over to the OpenAI API, we're using both the chat completion as well as the image creation APIs over on the right here. And basically, once OpenAI interprets the prompt, it generates the recipe. Within that recipe, it generates a visual description of what the cocktail should look like. And then that visual description is sent to the AI image creator, which then ultimately returns the image and the recipe back to the user. So I want to talk a little bit about prompt engineering in the next slide here, because that is one of the first ways that you can start to manipulate and train an AI tool. So the first thing you're seeing here is the actual code snippet from the application we wrote. And what's really interesting about writing prompts is that it is very natural in the way that humans speak. It's no longer, it has to be very programmatic in the way that you work with ChatGPT. And also, at this point, I didn't have to program any database for any types of liquors or classic recipes or anything like that. All I asked for were the ingredients from the user. So as you start to look into the prompt that we have written here to send to ChatGPT, the first thing I have up top in bold here is that I want it to create a detailed and creative cocktail recipe. In our experience, using words and descriptors like this for ChatGPT really goes a long way in the type of output that you'll get from the AI model. So if I didn't put this in here, for example, we may just get a simple bulleted list as opposed to some of the extra flair that you saw in the response. You'll see also in here, I put things like, if no ingredients are provided, provide your own ingredient. Those who may be familiar in writing different programs, we always have to deal with kind of null responses from users and understanding how to manipulate those. But in this case, a simple natural prompt to say, if nothing's provided, please add your own was enough to make sure that they fill in all the blanks within our recipe. In the middle there, that's really the only programmatic piece where we're inputting the data. So that's from the list that was provided by the user. And then down at the bottom is some of the things that really help us use the outcome from the AI. So, for example, you'll see I said additionally add a name to the cocktail, starting with cocktail name. So that means that every recipe should have cocktail name with a colon and a space. They're ready to give you your cocktail title. And then the piece that I used for the AI image generation was I said, for the visually impaired, please create a description that starts with the words cocktail description. And for it to be very consistent in the way that it's writing that cocktail description, I can then remove that cocktail description and feed just that into the AI image creation model. So this is, the importance of prompt engineering, where if we left it up to just say, create a cocktail recipe using these ingredients, the app may not function as we would expect. So this is the first way you can start to kind of manipulate and engineer with ChatGPT to get the output that you would expect.
So, Ryan, you work with a lot of global brands in terms of optimizing their data. So you're on the next slide, right?
Yes. So let's talk about what this application could look like at a larger scale. So you maybe all be familiar with Diageo. They're a large conglomerate that owns probably half the liquor store that we may all be going to. But Diageo also supplies the Diageo Bar Academy, where they have a very long list of recipes that includes all of their liquor, right? So as you could see, or may not have saw, but in my cocktail recipe, it did not specify a brand. It did not specify any certain vintage of any of the liquor included. So for Diageo, what they would be interested in is creating a bartender app, but they want to be sure that their liquors and their products are what's being pushed to the customers who want to create these applications. So in this example, what we want to do is extract the existing recipes from the Bar Academy that Diageo has built and feed it into the ChatGPT generator. So there's a few different ways to do this, but ultimately, ChatGPT allows you to kind of build your own fork of the model of their large language model. So if you want to jump to the next slide here. So in terms of how it works in training your own model, attached to your API, you're able to input additional data structure that basically ChatGPT will read in and start to understand how your model, or how you want your model to work for you. So today there is a few limitations of ChatGPT that I do want to call out, particularly that it only takes in two pieces of data. It takes in a prompt and a response. So if you look over at the data structure that I made as an example on the right, a prompt could be something as simple as, I'm looking for a recipe with rum for a day at the beach. And the response I have to the right is directly pulled from Diageo's recipe book. So it's a Captain Morgan spiced rum recipe. And the idea here is that you need to start to build a data structure where the prompt and the response starts to build what you want your model to start to output from ChatGPT. So this starts to solve for that issue of ChatGPT only existing, with data up to 2021, I believe it is right now. So you can start to manipulate this model. And, even though the limitations today are that the data structure exists for prompt and responses, I think that, the way that we're seeing AI grow so exponentially, you're quickly going to be able to put things like product information management system data and incorporate that into ChatGPT and say, please only use products from this PIM system. Or you can integrate it with maybe a digital asset management system or CMS when you start to build new websites and say, please utilize our content from this DAM system when importing images, videos, whatever it might be. I only see it getting more and more flexible in the ways that you can build these forks of the AI model. And I think it's really exciting in terms of, where it could go from here. So the last piece I want to leave you with before I hand it over to Josh, who has another great example of a real world application. I just want to talk about where some of this data may come from. So you can head to the next slide. So some examples that I've seen in terms of sources that people are using to start to gather this prompt and response data. Chatbot conversations are really popular. So a lot of startups and corporations have AI chatbots that are already working, that basically they have a lot of data from their customers asking questions and have the chatbot responses. If you can grade those responses to the best outcomes that you appreciate from your chatbot today, I think there's only room to improve those type of chatbots and customize it utilizing ChatGPT. There's also things like knowledge management tools that may contain your taxonomy and your own company's kind of definitions of different terms, or however you may, structure your data today. There's document repositories that you can read in, and then digital asset management systems, like I touched on earlier, that may contain all of your video and images. That as AI image generation gets more and more advanced, it may start to understand your style, your products, and be able to help you generate AI images based off of your own content. And the real, heavy lift here is that transformation, right? I think we all have experienced really, unstructured data, data that may need some cleaning up. So without properly clean data to input into the bot and train, test, and validate it to make sure it's working as expected, that's where the heavy lift comes in. So I think it's a really exciting space in terms of being able to manipulate such a powerful machine like ChatGPT. And I really only expect it to get more and more available to organizations to be able to put in their own proprietary data and really have a customized bot for them to rely on.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. We're also on the front end of seeing the specialization of these tools for industries, just like we have many different types of hammers. So we're seeing a subspecialization to tailor these to both types of activities within organizations, but also how they may vary by industry. So why don't we throw up the next couple questions for polling, and we'll tee up Josh to go through actually a visual example with DALL-E after this these next two questions. And while you're all, so I think the question, one of the questions that came in chat is how you can use AI to manage your LinkedIn contacts for better networking. I mean, we're on the front end of new businesses, right? So, Fred, you just did a search, right?
Yeah, and the issue is with ChatGPT, you can't directly manage your LinkedIn account, but it offered some tips to optimize your profile, to expand your network, to engage with content, to join relevant groups, utilize advanced search, etc. But I may try that with Bard, since that's actually connected.
But I believe someone's probably thinking about building that tool. So how do we automate our activity on LinkedIn to make it more efficient for us? So how are we coming on the poll?
We are good. We're still getting quite a few responses in, so I'm just giving it another 15 seconds or so, and then I can share the results with everyone.
Yeah, so someone also, I'll just, Matt shared on chat that Harvey AI for legal research. So an example of the specialization of these tools across industries and specialties. Fred's getting more answers from Bards.
Keep going.
Yeah. Okay. 84% writing articles. So we're helping us customer support, 36%, personal assistance, 49%, language transition, visual tutorial, and education. So thank you for all your input. And we got questions coming in. And Fred, tee up the next, tee up Josh. So the good news here, folks, is there's less words.
Thank you. And we can all use ChatGPT or Bard or whoever else to create all the words that we don't want to have to create ourselves. Thanks for having me on the call and the discussion. I'll start by providing just a quick anecdote on what I was trying to solve here for myself. For those of you who know me, you know that I've become recently sort of obsessed with soccer in a good way. My son happens to play for Arlington's Academy here in Northern Virginia. They went to the national championship a couple of years ago. We are headed back there again in July. And one thing I've spent a lot of time energy and effort on is being the camera dad and talking to coaches and others there about space and space management. And it's very difficult to manipulate space and space management with the video processing and other tools that are available today, even with some of the best technology that is out there. But it is a very big problem, in particular for a sport like soccer, where there's so much fluidity to the game. Players go on, they start in a position, and then immediately it's kind of like a diaspora on the field. And not just for this sport, but for many others. When I was first thinking about the problem, I didn't actually think there was a way to automate a fair amount of this. A long time ago, I used to be into golf. And if you've ever seen somebody hit a golf ball, they automatically draw this cute little arc on the screen for showing what the golf ball is doing. They're using very advanced high resolution cameras to accomplish that, and then some graphics that are part of the camera system itself. But we happen to be talking about space management with some coaches, in particular for my son's team, to kind of bring it back to home. And what could be done, what could be shown using some of these automated tools? Well, spin forward 6 months ago to ChatGPT and DALL-E and a number of the natural language processing tools that are now available to all of us that we've been talking about. And DALL-E was the one that kind of moved me, if you will, in terms of being able to generate real information and potentially a real solution here to this kind of problem without having somebody to go in and essentially hand draw what's going on or what's not going on. So maybe if we can click on the first video and show a little bit about what we're talking about, that would be great.
Wait.
Nope.
We just, excuse me, I'm going to change that share.
Okay.
There we go.
You might want to drag it back to the start. Thank you. And just let me set the stage very quickly. So what we're looking at is a live game. We've taken feeds from the game. There are players who are in a position to score, and then there are players who are essentially ignored, or one player in particular who's ignored that's going to show up on the right. That should have been the option to go with. And again, coaches, others who are trying to understand space management and understand how to best show players are literally still using magnetic boards where they're putting different pieces on the puzzle. And so we created this using DALL-E's technology to highlight a little bit more clearly what options they have. And then when they go back to do teaching, recruiting, again, competitive analysis, that's what this could be used for. So if you can hit play. You'll see options come up in yellow. And then what they should have done in green, which again is all done through natural language processing in drawing these options in essentially what are not real time, but on a slight delay depending on the connectivity. They missed the goal. The player on the right was somebody that they should have passed to, but unfortunately did not. We can go to the next one. This is displaying something in the opposite format, if you will, but showing essentially the blob of defenders who make it very difficult for one of the players to pass the ball. One more to the right, please. Thank you. Yep, and you can hit play on that. So the AI is actually drawing this polygon around the players that are making up this defensive stance. And again, visually showing this as a representation of good defense and good defensive play within what's happening. So the player in the bottom right who has the ball is unable to do anything and is left just shoving it into the middle and of course not being able to make a connection. So this could be used again to show how this can be done for a defensive stop. And then there's one more. And this is from a completely different angle, what's called the bird's eye view of the field from above. Player getting the pass, you can see the highlighted area where he has control. And then these empty spaces in between that are painted in that show his options for either making a pass or trying to occupy space. And these empty spaces are designed to highlight to a coach or anybody else, the players, whoever it might be, recruiters, hey, this is the options they could have taken, but did not. So we can go ahead and hit play on the rest of it.
So, Josh, are you using this to help train your son's team?
Yes. So my son's team, and again, they're I like to joke that they're loaded. We literally have 2 squads that are going to nationals, and so we're cheating the system, if you will, by giving these guys a better understanding of space and space management, which is a large problem. For those of us old enough on the call to remember a gentleman by the name of Johan Cruyff. He was European Soccer Player of the Year in the 70s. He is the person who is uniquely responsible for making Barcelona. And his obsession around space, my own now included, is kind of this mashup that we've created here using natural language processing to highlight and better teach what is a very difficult thing to get done. So that's
he is who I followed when I lived in the Netherlands in 1974. So just a circle.
Okay, so you know Johan personally then. Yes, exactly.
Johan Cruyff, yes.
But a fair amount of it was his question, and then I'm gonna be quiet. His last question was to everybody out in the soccer world, if you were, you only touch the ball for 3 minutes of the game at the high end. What are you doing the other 87 minutes? And it's that 87 minutes that we're trying to help people look at, understand better, and again, using natural language processing to help accomplish that.
So great. We have some questions in chat, but I think audio is open for other people to ask questions live.
So I would like to point out the one about the legal work and be careful with that. Definitely true. That lawyer got in a lot of trouble because he used ChatGPT and it made up those case citations. And you do have to understand what it is you're dealing with and how to recognize when you're struggling or it's struggling. So let's see. I see somebody with a hand raised here. Fred, go ahead.
Yes. Is there a way to provide, let's say, half a dozen articles about a subject and then have ChatGPT, analyze and assimilate those, 6 different articles, which may have different viewpoints?
Yeah, I haven't actually tried that, but I think you can do that. I think you could link to each one of them and it'll go through it. And there's also the use of it iteratively. Yep. Martin, I see raised the thumb there. So other questions?
Ryan, do you have a comment on that? Because you loaded content in to create your cocktail engine, right?
Yeah. I think what's interesting is that if you're having a conversation with ChatGPT, which is what most people know it as, it will remember everything previously that you had talked to it about. So if you load in an article, have a conversation, ask it to have some comments on it, and then say, what do you think about this differing opinion from this article? It will start to be able to work through it. Bard may be better in that circumstance than using the ChatGPT app, because again, Bard can actually read, live links and things like that. But it does, keep a cache and work through it that way.
Why don't we throw up let's throw up the poll, and Fred.
Oh yeah, let's go with the last poll, and then I saw this one question on clinical summaries, which is a fascinating one too.
So why people are voting, Fred?
Yeah, if you'll put up that third poll.
So were you going to respond to the question?
So we had already taken the third poll with the other one, but I can share the results again. It was combined.
It was combined.
It's number 2.
Okay. So let's go to that other question. Let me pull that back up. It was a question for about medical and using it for notes on clinical summaries and doctor's notes and nurses' notes. I'd be nervous with that. There are issues, but it is getting to the point. What you're now starting to see is some of the healthcare systems are building the AI model off their own data and building their LLM off of that. And there, I think there's going to be a lot of usefulness. I think over time they're going to get there. I know that Epic is integrating right now. I think with ChatGPT. So you're going to begin to see this. I think it can help quite a bit. I've used it to write patient education materials, and even to the level of saying, I'd like you to generate this at the 6th grade reading level for those with lower health literacy. And obviously, you've got to look at it, make sure it's right, have somebody with some expertise take a look at it. But I definitely think there are options there.
And another comment on that. So understand that Microsoft acquired Nuance. So Nuance was a medical dictation, real-time conversion of voice into notes and whatever, and they've been refining that technology. Nuance also is the basis for Siri, but also recognize that I'm going to look at, in like 3 or 4 months, I'm going to look at the browser market share and the use of browsers, because clearly Bing and Edge are, going head to head with Google. And now Microsoft, it was announced, I saw an article today where Microsoft is looking to create a third-party addition to those external Firefox and other search engines to basically drive more use of their platforms.
Yeah. A question from Akash, it looks like.
Yeah, thank you. So great stuff. Super excited about ChatGPT and just wish that it was available when I was still in school. But I just starting my business, and I guess I wanted direction in regards to how ChatGPT can help me come up with, everything from maybe designing my logo, or I'm sorry, not designing my logos, stating my slogan, to creating contracts that I'm giving for my, for my specific types of consulting services. And what direction?
I would open it up right after this call, and I would actually type that in. Type in what your company's about, create a good prompt, what your company's about, and say, create a slogan off of this. And then if you don't like it, say create another, and create another, and create another, until you get to one that seems to make sense. I use that for questions a lot. So I think that's an opportunity, but I would take each of those areas, even to, hey, an introduction to your company.
Right.
You could have it write that. You could, and then put it in your words, but it saves a ton of time.
And I'm doing regular search side by side with ChatGPT on different things too, to see if the search engine brings up different things and comparing it to what ChatGPT or Bard brings up. So it's another opportunity just to have access to more data being scanned and bringing back and synthesizing results in a form that could be adapted based on your human judgment.
And one other thing to think about too with this, and see all the comments about ChatGPT and Bard. If you use Bard, you'll notice at the bottom, Google it. And so I use that to then go find the sites or check out the information further by what's available there on Google, and find the information after I've had it come up from Bard. Or to send me, link me to the article, show me this information.
No, and we're really all students in this, and so the idea of doing a SIG around this with the CONNECTpreneur community is I think quite intriguing, given that we're all learning and we'll learn better together, as opposed to just relying on AI being our tutor.
Yeah, and this question on thoughts on the future, be interesting to see what others think of this, of news and entertainment media companies with AI. These streaming platforms and online, it can create a ton of stuff very fast, and as I said, I actually took one thing I did that was fascinating. I have a framework for population health that I came up with myself. It's not published. I stuck the framework in, the 7 steps of the framework, and said, write a blog post for each step of this framework. And it did. And the difference was fascinating. So ChatGPT looked at the term survey, which I meant in a large sense to survey your population and gather data from survey tools, from biometrics, from clinical data, from the electronic health record, from claims. And Bard got that right. ChatGPT wrote it. Well, you can survey a person through email, you can survey them by telephone, you can survey them by text, completely different understanding of the process. But it wrote some really nice stuff, and then I just tweaked the heck out of it. Some was easier than others, put it in my language and stuff, fixed a few things, added some stuff it missed, and it was good to go.
Ryan, our colleague, John Hordusky, wrote a book, Metadata Matters. So John, Ryan, let me ask you a question. Does metadata matter when it comes to generative AI?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think I can joined together two questions I saw in the chat here. One was about translation services and being careful there, and couple that with the questions about the online news media. One of the clients we're working with right now who publishes all across Asia, we're using ChatGPT to basically create better communication with people in Indonesia, people in Tibet, and people with languages that aren't widely available. And we're doing that very carefully with people that we can check these translations with. So we built a similar application to basically say, when we input something in English, can you output it in the 13 languages that we need? And then we're having that be validated by some of our constituents here in DC who speak those languages, and then allowing us to distribute those. In the same world, as we're learning how well ChatGPT can translate our input, it actually helps the news writers write in their local language and then have their news be available, internationally in terms of distributing it to the other countries within that region. So it's really interesting in terms of how news media can start to use ChatGPT not to build or write original content, but just make their content more widely available to audiences they may not have been able to access before. So same idea with closed captioning for these streaming services, opening up the markets to new languages that may not be able to access their content. And then eventually, there's even voice generation, right? So think about how much is spent with voice actors to translate into different languages for the streaming services. And that's why it's so focused to only a few audiences. Now, if you can translate the text, you can potentially translate to an AI audio that can now write captions for your actors for all of your streaming content. It's going to be huge for YouTube, for small startups, and working through all that.
Ryan, can you put your LinkedIn profile in the chat? And mine is Douglas E. Goldstein to separate it on a search. I don't have access. I have access to the computer, but I'm not going to type it in right now. But Douglas E. Goldstein for me. Fred, is it Frederick Goldstein or Fred?
Yeah, I think it's at FS Goldstein.
And Josh, you have a unique last name, so you probably easy.
It's okay. I'll put it in there with a phonetic way of saying it. I did want to actually answer Akash's question about, and he misspoke unintentionally about maybe creating a logo. You could use DALL-E to do it. Go ahead and give that a try as well. There's no reason not to.
Got it.
Well, yeah. So there's many flavors of generative AI. So watch the news, see what people are coming out, because there's going to be a rapid innovation cycle because people are using these tools to innovate.
So I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe along the lines of what Ryan was just speaking about. So if you're starting with like a general search, but you want to bring in some cultural context, what are some prompts or some ways you can tell or signal to ChatGPT to be really conscious of maybe some cultural context? Are there any ideas, any project you worked on along those lines?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Sometimes it's almost like talking to a toddler where you go, please be courteous, polite, and professional. It's as simple as that, is say in your response, you can tell it to be humorous or you can tell it to be rude as well. So that was really interesting to see the different ways. We worked really closely with a native Korean speaker who was able to kind of translate, and she had a lot of fun just seeing the different ways that the Korean outputs would change when we asked it to be funny or, add some cultural context or whatever it might be. So that goes back to kind of prompt engineering in terms of what you're asking ChatGPT to do. You can also tell it to avoid certain topics or avoid certain things. And again, it will kind of keep that in its cache to say, okay, I don't include those. And if anyone's interested, the API, you're able to input all of this preemptively. So it's another way to kind of engineer the ChatGPT API to say, every time somebody puts in a response, I want it to know this contextual or this context. I want it to respond in this way. I experimented with the cocktail recipe to say, only give it to me like you're an old pirate in the Caribbean or something like that. And it can do those types of things as well. So you can put in all this context and build it into your applications to output, your expected outcome. So those are a few things from the prompt engineering side that I would include to make sure that, it's being courteous in a professional setting.
So Ryan, next time we do this, you have to have one of your cocktails that was created in your hand.
Yeah, Connect Tails, right? I can plug that, Tian.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There we go.
Other questions?
We got a couple more minutes.
Yeah,
Joshua, so I have to ask you a question.
Oh,
Are your kids winning more games through your space training?
if anybody is on from DC United, I will apologize because we've horsewhipped you the last 2 years in a row for some reasons. I say that, and then I'm like, I'd love for DC United to give this a go. But no, it's certainly helped. I think the biggest challenge in deciding what we were going to show and what we weren't going to show was, well, it's clearly a visual game, right? You play the game with a ball on a big field, and you've got lots of people running around. How do you best show this? And we looked at kind of, I guess, what was out there and allegedly helping the players. And this is just another additive on top of that. So I think this is giving them another piece of data that, as young players and they grow into becoming kind of, ones who can get recruited for college or professionally, then it is helping them understand space and how important it is to manage it well, and not just to say, well, he stands in the right place, or this one is quick or this one isn't quick. It really is about influencing.
We've got a couple of questions too.
Yeah, quick.
Josh, wait, I think Drew had a question.
Hi. Yeah. So I actually I attended a masterclass. I think it was Thursday last week. It was also a CONNECTpreneur, traditional Web3 worlds and creating financial value, and it's spilled into conversation. Great masterclass, by the way. It's spilled into conversation around AI and intellectual property. Right. So, I mean, I understand. I've been using ChatGPT. Understand the latest rage and all that kind of stuff. I'm actually a CTO, so I understand the tech community very well. And I keep hearing people say, "Use it, just keep using it." Right. And I agree. It's something that it's going to be a user lose eventually. However, where we sit right now with intellectual property and using AI, generative AI, to produce patents and content, at what point is it dangerous for a content or a patent creator to be using AI to develop their next big thing?
Yeah, I'd be very careful with anything like a patent or medical information, a person's medical information or personal information or things like that, because ultimately they'll absorb that in and use it to build better answers and things like that. And your private or your IP, I know I can't remember who it was JP Morgan or somebody uploaded a whole bunch of their confidential information to ChatGPT for something. And you really don't want to be doing that. So I would definitely steer clear of some of those things.
Well, Fred, can I use a search engine to help me produce a patent?
Yes.
Well, these are issues that we're dealing with. These are unanswered issues that we're all trying to noodle through.
And we've got some hands raised here.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess the concern is generative AI or AI-based organizations, or who's running the AI, is collecting feedback from who's using it. Right. At what point, if it's writing code for you and it writes 98% of the next best-selling video game in the world, at what point is that AI organization going to come back and start clawing, or trying, from a legal perspective, trying to claw back some of that earnings from using that platform to create something along those lines? Or from the movie.
Great frontier.
Yeah, is not known. I think there's a question here from Nina. I'm not sure how I pronounce your name. Sorry.
Hi, Nina.
Thank you.
Question about how prolonged use of ChatGPT or Bard might influence some of its responses. So, for example, on social media, you can get yourself into a bubble through what you click on and what you react to. when Ryan, you said something like, tell GPT to be, more polite, like the toddler comment. I went in, I was playing with it on the side, and I said, give me the last question, but please be more funny. But I don't want it to always be funny. So maybe this is a lack of my understanding, but both for my specific question, is it now going to be funny all the time? But even more broadly, is there some sort of bubble that can get created by training your sort of fork or your little real estate within these worlds?
Yeah. So I think to kind of understand how it goes about that, you got to get a little bit more into what ChatGPT is doing in the background. Basically, whatever prompt you give it, it's breaking your question into a bunch of little tokens that is basically a combination of smaller letters, right? So one word may be 2 letters for one token or something along those lines. And at the end of the day, ChatGPT is trying to be the most efficient as possible while still answering your response. So let's just say you ask it a very simple question without asking it to be polite and courteous. It is going to take the most efficient route to just answer your question directly without any of the extra language that may be that human response. So in terms of it, like remembering that you're asking it to be funny in the long term, I think as a program, it is always looking to be as efficient as possible and use as little resources as possible to answer your question. So until you tell it that it has to be funny all the time, or you have it saved in the program that it needs to be funny, then it's always going to revert back to the shortest answer that it can give you, which most likely has none of that extra language involved. So that's, again, where it comes back to that cash and what you're asking of it. And that's kind of my most basic understanding of it. So it may influence it in the long term. For example, ChatGPT or OpenAI could release something that says, we're going to build an assistant that constantly remembers how you like your responses. And it's only going to continue to be funny for you or be polite or whatever it might be. But for now, I think its default is always to be efficient, which is going to be that direct kind of answer the question as quickly as possible.
That could get kind of funny if someone says, please be more conservative or please be more liberal, and then they end up further in the bubble that might have already existed.
Yes, 100%.
I know we're coming up on the end. Just real quickly, I saw one here about there was one on Excel. I haven't tried that yet, but there maybe we do that. And on prompt engineering courses, it's interesting, but I found a ton of this stuff up on Twitter, where people will post, here are the 10 best ways to put together a prompt or something like that. You can find that all over the internet as well. So I would start there, but I'm sure there are already classes and people out there talking just like we are on prompt engineering, et cetera. I don't know, Ryan, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so prompt engineering, there's a lot of different courses out there. The first place I would start is just experimenting with your own inputs and seeing like what type of outputs you would want. If you are familiar with writing programs, then you can start to manipulate the way that ChatGPT outputs its responses and start to kind of extract those responses based off of your own applications. If you're not familiar with writing programs, you can ask ChatGPT how to write a program for its, API or whatever it might be, and start to work through that.
But it won't get me coffee yet, right?
Not quite. Classes in particular, I took a few on Udemy to learn about prompt engineering. YouTube is obviously a great free resource. There's just so much content out there. But at the end of the day, this is brand new. So I would really take what you learn and then start to experiment for your own use. I don't think anyone can say that they're an expert on prompt engineering. I have seen it popped up as a skill on LinkedIn, so people are getting ahead of it. But really, it's so new that I would just kind of learn the basics and then start to kind of practice on your own.
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be MIT courses, upskilling. And so actually we're seeing universities starting to come out with AI degree programs, of which probably there'll be prompt engineering will be coursework in a degree program. So it's happening quite fast. If we go back to the release of this in the wild, it was just 6 months ago. So here we are, and we're on the only front end of this journey. Let's go back to the first search engine and how that's evolved. So this will be more rapid because there's more data that we're all human data generators, and that's being fed into the models from wearables and other sorts of, we're running our lives through apps of daily living. So there's just more data for AI to apply across all of its applications.
Great.
So
With that,
thank you all for all your questions and hanging out. So yeah, we got 203 people still hanging out here. Thank you all.
Pretty good.
Thank you, everybody.
Is it over?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
we
we
can
could go
keep it
for
open
hours, couldn't we?
Yeah, sorry, we can keep it open for a few more minutes. I think Doug and Fred might have to roll because they're at a conference. They got to go speak. But you know, if Josh,
I just have a
I'm still here for a little bit if you need to.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, we'll let you go. This is the
we'll end the
second of three
recording.
for us.
And yeah, we'll end the recording now, and the recording will be available on YouTube once it's edited. So again, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you get notified when it hits. But thank you guys all for joining. And yeah, it's officially over. We want to start on time and end on time. That's one of our hallmarks. And again, thank you guys for joining us.